A Russian cosmonaut has revealed a disturbing recording. During a space sojourn, he filmed something that could prove we're not alone in the universe. What do we know about the mysterious flying objects? Are we really dealing with alien spaceships here? But that's not all. As leaked secret documents reveal, the Soviets were even willing to sacrifice countless human lives to win the space race. A few years ago, Ivan Wagner was granted an honor that few people will ever have. The Russian cosmonaut found himself aboard the International Space Station, marveling at our blue home planet from a unique vantage point. As if this view wasn't overwhelming enough, a magical spectacle also crept into the scene. This is how Ivan saw the Aurora Australis, also called Southern Lights, prance across the Earth in billowing patterns. While the space traveler marveled at the enchanting phenomenon, a camera ran along the entire time. However, the time-lapse recording later revealed something that sent the entire web community into a frenzy and raised a fundamental question. What on earth is that? A question that even Wagner could not answer. Thus, the video that the cosmonaut posted on Twitter was accompanied by the following entry: Space Guests, or How I Filmed the New Time-Lapse. The aurora reaches its peak when crossing Antarctica on the Australian longitude, so in between. In the video, however, you don't just see the aurora, you see something else. The following tweet then said, "From second 9 to 12, 5 objects appear flying side by side at the same distance. What do you think they are? Meteors, satellites, or what?" A look at the video shows that the strange objects have an unusual flight pattern. It seems as if they appear from the proverbial nothing. Afterwards, the light points move dead straight and in perfect formation, before they already fade away again in the gigantic widths of the space. Since we have to do it here as mentioned with a time-lapse recording, the short flashing of the formations lasted in reality about 52 seconds. The price of success. Yuri Alexeyevich Gagarin has immortalized himself in our history books for all time. On April 12, 1961, he left Earth behind and advanced aboard the Vostok 1 spacecraft to become the first man in space. At this point, however, it is useful to recall a fact. The boom, which space travel experienced at that time, did not arise at all from a purely scientific interest, but from the turmoil of the Cold War. While the US and the Soviet Union were bound by bitter enmity, the two superpowers tried to outdo each other in every conceivable field. While the conflict on Earth escalated among other things in bloody proxy wars, the feud spilled over finally also into the widths of the universe. In view of the acclaimed moon landing by Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin in 1969, we tend to quickly forget one fact. In the race to space, the Soviet Union was initially ahead. Thus, October 4, 1957, went down in American history as the Sputnik shock. Shaken to its foundations by the space descent of the Soviet satellite Sputnik 1, the US population had to digest the next setback a few weeks later. The Soviets put the first living creature into orbit around the Earth in the form of Laika the dog. In retrospect, it was obvious that the next logical step was to send a human being into space as well. But what was sold to the public as a glittering success story was in reality a game with fire. Some published secret documents show that Yuri Gagarin was lucky to have survived his pioneering flight at all. Even more, according to all appearances, the death of the cosmonaut would have been accepted even approvingly. The secret chaos. Thus, 2 days before the launch at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, there was by no means a confident mood, but a nervous tension. The engineers had discovered that the combined weight of Gagarin, his spacesuit and the seat exceeded the permissible limit by 14 kilos. Henceforth, those in charge removed all parts from the spacecraft that seemed somehow expendable. Since this included 2 sensors for pressure and temperature, a short circuit occurred. Technicians worked through the night to fix the defect. However, the secret documents reveal not only a series of technical malfunctions, but also the willingness of the Soviet leadership to risk Gagarin's life to put the United States in its place. To meet the intended schedule at all costs, the Soviets resorted to quick and easy solutions. which, however, were far from optimal from a technical standpoint. For example, they deliberately avoided developing emergency systems that would have intervened in the event of a fire or a launch failure. Less than 3 minutes after the Soyuz rocket had taken to the skies, the control system partially failed and the engine shut down 15 seconds too late. A short time later, Gagarin reported that the pen for the logs had also come loose from its holder and was floating unreachable in the capsule. Since the logbook was henceforth unusable, the cosmonaut put it in his pocket. 108 minutes later, Gagarin had circumnavigated the Earth, but the landing also went anything but according to plan. The originally targeted landing site was missed by about 600 kilometers. Since the Soviets had not yet developed a mechanism for a soft landing, the spaceman was ejected from the capsule with a parachute at an altitude of 7,000 meters. In the end, the cosmonaut needed almost 6 minutes to open the breathing valve of his spacesuit. A cord had become knotted. But no matter what adversities accompanied the mission, one thing is undisputed. Yuri Gagarin was the first man to leave Earth behind and set off into space. Or was he? The lost cosmonauts. To this day, the persistent rumor persists that Gagarin was not, in fact, the first cosmonaut to venture into the gigantic expanses of space. He was merely the first to survive his mission. And even if the Soviet Union was known for sweeping failures of all kinds under the carpet, one circumstance should not remain unmentioned at this point. The relevant conspiracy theories have never been officially confirmed. But those who believe that the stories have a kernel of truth are convinced that the path to space was paved with corpses. In 1959, physicist and rocket pioneer Hermann Oberth drew attention to himself when he claimed that a Soviet cosmonaut had died during a suborbital flight from the Kapustin Yar Cosmodrome. However, Oberth preferred to keep the source of his information secret. 1959 was also the year in which the Italian news agency Continentale published explosive news. A high-ranking Czech communist had revealed that a man named Alexei Ladovsky had died during an unofficial space launch. In the same breath, the names of 3 other doomed cosmonauts were mentioned: Sergei Shiburin, Andrei Mitkov, and Maria Gromova. The unconfirmed rumors were fueled by an article in the newspaper Ogonyok that told of flights at high altitude and showed 3 people in spacesuits. In 1960, Italian brothers Achille and Giovanni Giudica Cordelia again devoted themselves to the task of recording the Soviets' secret space radio traffic. In their radio station, which they had built near Turin, the two witnessed, among other things, Yuri Gagarin's first flight into space. However, this was by no means the only message intercepted at the time. Between November 28 and 30, the pair of brothers registered repetitive Morse signals with the message SOS to the entire world. Using the Doppler effect, they found that the message was clearly transmitted by an object that was in motion. Ultimately, the incident was linked to an ill-fated Soviet mission, but the world public never learned of it. Vladimir Ilyushin. After test pilot Vladimir Ilyushin put a distance of nearly 29 kilometers between himself and the Earth's surface in 1959, he was awarded Hero of the Soviet Union the following year. Later, Ilyushin also received the Order of Lenin, the Lenin Prize, and the State Prize of the Russian Federation. However, one entry in his vita remains unaccounted for. He should have become the first man in space instead of Yuri Gagarin. At least that's what the corresponding theories say, which have been circulating for quite some time. 2 days before Gagarin's launch, a newspaper article said that Ilyushin was involved in a serious car accident. However, this is said to have been a fake news story, intended only to distract from his spaceflight gone wrong. In fact, Ilyushin's trip into space is said to have been successful. However, a series of serious complications occurred during the flight, which forced the alleged cosmonaut to make an emergency landing in China. Ilyushin had then been captured by the Chinese authorities, seriously injured. But since a crash landing and a man who had narrowly escaped death did not fit the public image, the Soviets kept quiet. While the unofficial list of Soviet accidents and fatalities is conceivably long, the official one continues to have only 4 entries. The first cosmonaut who died in an accident and was recognized by the Soviet Union was Vladimir Komarov. He had participated in the Soyuz 1 mission in April 1967, which ended in an absolute disaster. Since the spacecraft had considerable technical defects, the flight had to be aborted prematurely. However, the spacecraft's parachute system failed, causing it to crash to the ground at a speed of 145 km/h, killing Komarov. The three remaining fatalities were Georgy Dobrovolsky, Vladislav Volkov, and Viktor Pazayev. While the Soyuz 11 mission of 1971 initially seemed to be a complete success, the big shock followed after the return to Earth. The crew was found lifeless in the seats of the landing capsule. The reason for the tragic accident was that a pressure equalization valve had opened far too early. The cabin air escaped completely within a few seconds. Subscribe now because the most exciting videos are yet to come.